You're listening to the EndoCast, a podcast about all things endometriosis, with your hosts, Britt Thelman-Pangrel and Dr. Eric Heegard. Hello, and welcome back to the EndoCast. This is Britt, and I'm here with Dr. Eric Heegard.
It is so nice to be with you, Britt. What are we going to talk about today?
Great question. Well, we have a special guest in studio today. Let me introduce you to John Pangrel.
Hello.
Wow, nice to meet you
Nice
and
to
have
meet
you on the show, John.
Thank you.
I know what
happy
you're
to be
thinking.
here.
You're probably like, how many people are named Pangrel? And
What's the chance of this?
Your guess is right. This is going to be an episode all on endometriosis and relationships.
Yep.
So I thought, what better way to talk about relationships than to put my own under the mic and bring
Why
in
not?
my husband.
Why is
him
it
under
so
the
hot
heat.
in here? Is it the light that's shining on my face?
Well, I think this is a great idea because we really, most times, are kind of treating individuals too, but oftentimes it is a couple that are coming in when people have experienced many of the difficulties with endometriosis. Oftentimes, and most of the time, it's more than one person that's being affected.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people in the endo community have a partner or a parent or someone in their support system who is trying to support them. And I want to get that perspective and really understand what it's like to be in their shoes. And hopefully there are people in our audience that want to share this with their family members, and maybe John can kind of help them out and say,
that's a great
oh,
idea.
I was thinking this too.
Thank you, John. Seriously.
Absolutely.
I guess just to get started, I don't want you to mansplain endometriosis for us, but do you remember, the beginning of kind of my endo journey, and can you describe any of it or like how I was feeling?
Well, you'd have to go back to when we first met each other because you already had endometriosis. You didn't know
Right.
that you had endo at that point, but you did have it. So it was just once a month when you'd get your period. You'd be double over in pain, and I've obviously just growing up with a sister and having a girlfriends in the past. I've seen gals go through periods before, and some are worse than others, but yours seemed to be just extremely excruciating, and it would last a long time, and it just seemed to be really, really tough on you. And I didn't know if that was just because it was worse for you or what it was because I don't know.
Oh, you can say it. Did you think I was a drama queen?
A little bit. Not to
You're
say
fine.
that you. I just thought you might be a little bit of a wuss, possibly, or that pain. Your pain tolerance or threshold wasn't as high as I thought it could be.
I'm glad that you were willing to say that word
Yeah.
because and seriously, that is, you're not the first person to kind of think that.
Sure.
Well, and I think that that's the common perception, right? Not everybody, half the population has periods, right? And you have had several people in your life with periods.
Sure.
And you'd never seen anyone have the same reaction, right, in quotes, to these symptoms.
It was never that severe, ever.
Can I throw just a quick little context on this, which
Yeah.
is that I think that, John, you're coming from your perspective, and you are a partner to a woman that you've known for a part of your life and a part of your life.
Yeah.
The same thing happens, at least in my experience in talking to families, with people who have known this person their whole lives, meaning mothers, sisters, and other relatives who may not experience the same kind of discomfort with their own periods, and yet are looking at this young woman who's their relative and thinking, she's exaggerating because none of us have experienced that. And so
Sure.
you're not alone in that.
That's a good way to put it. Exaggeration. You think there's a little bit of exaggeration there, which we've come to find out that there wasn't. But
Oh, well, that was good. Yeah, I think that that's really common. And you're right, Dr. Heegard. We hear about that in all kinds of relationships with endometriosis, not just significant other and partner relationships. I also would say that endometriosis has affected our relationship in other ways too. So obviously once we were married, because I worked that out and got you to sign the deal here. So thanks.
You nailed it down.
Yeah. And we were,
He is cute, by the way.
Thanks. I think so too. And we were trying
And
to
funny.
get pregnant. I think
And
he's
charming.
pretty funny.
Oh,
I think
stop.
maybe Dr. Hegard wants to marry you.
I'm having a little man crush going on here.
Um,
And
You
you
know-
should hear him rap.
oh
Yes.
goodness. Okay, so once we were married and we're trying for all the baby stuff, I also would say, an area that we talk about a lot with partners or an area that we talk about a lot, which we talked about during the endo and sex episode, is painful intercourse. And I think
Yeah.
that's just one area I'd like to hear your perspective on. Just, because it's supposed to be this time where you're really in love with someone and you're coming together, and it's supposed to be like fun and feel good. And I mean, we've had these moments. It doesn't feel good for me sometimes.
Sure.
So I'm just wondering, like, from your perspective.
Well, I think that you kind of nailed it. It's uncomfortable and you don't enjoy it. And so, obviously when you're with somebody and you're with your partner and they're not enjoying it, it could be anything. If you're not enjoying a movie together, if you're not enjoying a meal together, you don't want to be there and you don't want to do it, let alone be intimate in a bedroom when somebody in the equation is not comfortable. It's just something that you don't want to do and you kind of shy away from because of the negative aspects that come along with it.
Right. So, I mean, I'm just thinking, like, so first of all, I'm a little dramatic, potentially, right? We're just putting it out there. Now I got you locked and loaded and we're married and sex is painful. So, like, this is something maybe you didn't really sign up for, right? And I mean, did you have anyone to talk to about this, or how did you process it? Because obviously you were my strength and you're someone that I could go to, talk through all of this. But did you have anybody that you could talk about it, or how did you process that?
I definitely have people in my life that I can talk to, whether, I feel that I have a very good core group of friends that I've known for years and years. So I have a great outlet there. I have parents and a sister who I can definitely talk to, brother-in-law who I'm super close with, who I can talk to, your family. I feel like I could have an outlet with them, but I didn't necessarily take any of that information or any of the things that were going on and have a conversation with anybody about it. But that's just me personally, because I kind of hold stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have the outlet and the people to be able to talk to. I really didn't talk through it with anybody, honestly.
Yeah, and I don't know how you bring that up. What do you think, Dr. Hegard?
Well, I think it just depends on your relationships with other people, and I would think that that kind of intimacy, the discussion of that kind of intimacy, I could see would be, number one, hard to broach,
Right.
but also in some ways, even with people that are close to you, you almost might feel a sense of betrayal and kind of going that far,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's how you felt, but and you're talking about the most intimate thing that two people can do, and perhaps to talk about that maybe you might perceive as casually or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't have a sex talk with like my mom or my dad or something, but
Well, not again.
Yeah, right.
True.
You had the first one when you were like 25. right?
Yeah, 25
Just,
exactly. Too late.
Yeah, no.
No.
John.
But I would obviously have it with my friends, but it is something that's hard to just bring up out of nowhere. You sit at a bar before a softball game or something like that, or before you go out and play golf. It's oh hey, by the way, it's painful for my wife when we have sex.
Right.
it's just something you don't really bring up. I guess I don't think that there's anything wrong with bringing it up. It's just how do you bring it up? I guess.
Right.
But so what I would say to that is, as great as a support system as you have, I think that, we talk about all the time how endo warriors and people with periods need to talk more about their periods and need to normalize
Right.
things like this and normalize conversations like this. But I would also say, especially with your partners, it can be hard. I would think even if your partner, and obviously I don't have this experience to speak from firsthand, but I would say even if your partner is of the same, as you, it would be difficult to talk about with their support system about something so intimate like that. But I think especially for men, and again, this is just my perspective, so don't let me lady-splain this, guys, but it's not something that you would just casually bring up.
No, not really. I don't think so. It's not like, you watch Sex and the City or something where you have this group of women who just sit around and talk about sex and the men that they've been with and stuff like that, whether they're in a long-time relationship or it's something that just happened last night. Guys don't really just sit around and talk about gals, at least in my circles, right? We talk about sports, we talk about work, we talk about trips to Vegas that we want to take for someone's birthday or something like that. We're not sitting around talking about, Kathy did this or last week, or Jane did this last week. At least the conversations that we have, we don't really do that.
So I think what's interesting about that is, what's really helped me personally, and I think what's helped a lot of people in our community, is having someone to talk to that can relate to you.
Yep.
And having that endometriosis support group that meets in person or online. And I would say for our partners, that isn't readily available.
Right. I know that people have, and you probably have talked about this as well, is that of trying to create some social group or for partners, because it can be isolating and uncomfortable. And I think John, and I've noticed this with most of my my patients, which is that people care about their partner. You would like to, and if you did not care about Britt's feelings and her comfort, you'd be a sociopath. You'd be pathologic.
Absolutely.
And so, somebody who is in a caring relationship is going to create a dynamic that can be, and I think oftentimes is, very uncomfortable, because here you are and you're trying to engage in the physical aspect of, and emotional as well, but physical aspect of your marriage or relationship. And it's painful, and you'd have to be pathologic to not want to just keep doing this again and again and again if it's painful.
Absolutely.
And it's not normal.
Right.
And so then both the female or the person with periods who's having pain with sexual intercourse or sexual interaction, but also their partner who is also noticing that it's uncomfortable. And we are designed to avoid discomfort and pain as a species. And so it creates a dynamic where both people may be trying to start to avoid that.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about how difficult it is just to share with your partner, like, hey, sex is painful, or I'm doubled over in pain during my period and I don't want to come off as a wimp or being dramatic, etc. So I think then to expect your partner to just be able to absorb that and not have anywhere to go with it, I mean, that's kind of a lot to put on another person.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. So now we're on our journey. I'm off birth control. We get back from our honeymoon. I'm just catching you up to like where I want you to go in the timeline. And my pain's not getting better. What were you thinking then? Before I went and saw the doctor again and she was crazy.
I would say that sorry, excuse me. It was the same as before. It was just that you feel helpless because there's nothing that I can do to help your pain. There's ways that I can help make you comfortable when you're having your period and you're in pain, like getting you hot pads and hot water bottles and stuff like that.
See, I told you he's a good partner.
Oh.
And he knows where to buy those hot water bottles.
We have like 6 of them at the house because we keep losing them. Then we need them. There's ways to make you comfortable and stuff like that, but you feel helpless because there's nothing that I can do to make you feel better. And you also feel helpless because you had been to a few OBs, or I guess one in particular, that basically was saying that it was all in your head and that there was nothing wrong with you. And, they've seen you for years and years, but you know your body and you know that there's something else going on. And yeah, we live in a world where WebMD and all these other things, it's easy to misdiagnose yourself. You know, because every single disease in this world starts with high temperature, you know, those types of things. But you knew that your body, and you knew that there was something else going on, and you felt helpless, as I did. I felt helpless because I couldn't help you. You felt helpless because you weren't getting the feedback from the doctors that you wanted. So it was just kind of we were in a space where you almost go crazy because there's nothing you can do. It's just, let's just wait until the next period comes and get through this wave, and then everything will be good for a couple weeks, and then it'll come back. You know.
But layer on there the fact that we're trying to get pregnant. So, and my pain wasn't just during my period; it was also during ovulation.
I was going to ask. I didn't want to probe too far, but here we are talking. In the beginning of your relationship, can you tell us a little bit, and if you're comfortable doing this,
Sure.
kind of the progression of your pain? Like, did it change over the time frame of your relationship? Like when you met, it was like this, and did it get worse over time, or was it pretty much the same?
Well, I'll say this for you so you can feel comfortable enough to say it. She told me that she's had pain with sex with previous partners. So, you know, this was something that happened long before we got together.
Right. But I would say the pain outside of sex got worse when I went off birth control.
Okay.
And I know we discussed that kind of more in detail, like the progression of my own disease and pain in the infertility episode. But it flipped a switch. Like we got married in October, and then in January I went off birth control. And then by April, we were on our honeymoon, and we were like officially going to start trying. But progressively, my pain each month after January was getting worse and worse and worse. And so the time he's talking about now, this is kind of like July at this point.
Sure.
And it was so bad. And it was during ovulation too. And this is when that nurse practitioner was telling me, like, you're just frustrated that you're not pregnant yet. You need to just relax, things like that. I think you're being dramatic. And, you know, she kept doing ultrasounds.
She actually said that? We think you're being dramatic.
And the line that she said that really caught me off guard that I didn't know if you were going to say was, what do you want me to just have them cut you open? Because, of course, I had consulted Dr. Google. And Dr. Google said if you have endometriosis, the only way you can be diagnosed is through surgery. And then the great lie that we all tell ourselves is that surgery can't help. It just creates more scar tissue. So that was before, like, Nancy's Nook and all that stuff.
Yep.
And the way that I deal with pain, discomfort, frustration, my anxiety is to talk it out. That's just my nature. Yep. Great for a podcast. So I'm talking all this out with John, but you're internalizing all of this. Because I feel like you don't talk it out with anyone else.
Correct. As you can see, I'm a man of many words.
I wasn't sure what you were going to say. I'm like, what's he going to agree? Or?
Yeah, I mean, just any kind of talking it out would be with you, essentially, you know. But that's not really portraying my feelings and what's going on in my head, essentially.
Can I ask a quick question to John?
Yeah.
And is any of the I was just thinking about this as we were involved in the conversation a little bit earlier. Is any of the sort of feelings that you had about perhaps not wanting to share too much have to do with how you might worry about the perception of your wife to the other people in your circle?
No, not really, because Britt is a very open book.
Okay.
There's times where she makes me blush when we're in front of people and things that she'll share. And that's not necessarily things about me, but things about herself that she'll share. So I don't think that there's a lot of things that are off limits.
That's
the nature of this podcast.
Yeah.
This podcast is brought to you by my inhibition.
I can see how some people, or like thinking about previous partners and if they had this issue or something like that, I can see how that would be an issue, or, you know, something that you'd want to think about. But with Britt, no, just because she.
I was just thinking myself how you might want to, you
Protect.
You don't want to have, in your relationship, you don't want to have the other people. I'm just thinking myself, speaking from my own filter here, which is you may not want your family or your friends to every time they look at your partner to put it in the context of,
Sure.
well, she has pain with sex,
Right.
or she's got brutally painful periods and she's
Sure.
exaggerating.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they're all looking at her through a lens
Yeah,
that
makes
maybe
sense.
perhaps, and maybe for everybody, you really don't want necessarily that to be the way that your partner is being framed
Sure.
with other, in the circle around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I have a lot of personal feelings about that, or I know how I'm perceived. I'm self-aware enough to know that that's how I could come off with this disease or with struggling with infertility. So I think I work extra hard to combat that by being really outspoken about it and then getting stuff done and being busy and proving that it's not going to slow me down, even if it really is. I think John can attest to this. I will put on a brave face, slap on some eyelashes, and go, 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 go. But what he sees is when I come home and collapse in pain and need those hot water bottles and a back rub, or it's been 3 days and I'm still on the couch. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that other people don't see.
Right.
So it doesn't really matter how strong you are on the outside to kind of combat this image that might be your disease or what you're going through. But your partners, I don't want to say have to, but they do kind of have to live with both sides of you. And I feel like that's something that you could share too. I mean, it's not easy.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely not easy. But it's your partner, and that's the reality of your relationship. You just got to get through it. I mean, there's nothing more you can really do.
Yeah.
It's like if your partner, God forbid, got cancer or something like that. Like, neither of you asked for that. Neither of you wanted that. But that person's sick, and you're going to have to work with them through either getting well or passing away. It's just the way that it is.
John, do you feel like your ability to kind of understand or work around, or your perception of this, changed in any way compared to before she had an actual diagnosis? Because and she was told by her own practitioner or provider that she was exaggerating.
Sure.
And just to relax and that sort of thing. And then you got properly diagnosed by the wonderful Dr. Palmer. And so was that helpful to you to actually put a diagnosis to what she was?
100%. And I would say the first few months of our relationship was when the questioning happened. Oh, come on, is it really that bad? How can a period be this bad every single month, et cetera? But, as the months progressively went on, you really saw that this was something more was going on here than just a regular bad period.
Yeah.
And then, I thought it was pretty liberating because I was actually in the meeting with Dr. Palmer and Britt when she got diagnosed with endo, and it all happened very fast. And it was liberating because, okay, now someone's finally hearing her. Now someone's finally giving her the diagnosis that she's been screaming to people that she should have for
sometimes
years.
literally, sometimes not literally screaming,
But yeah, so it was a big deal when he diagnosed her with endo. Yes.
Well, and I think there were 2 meetings, right? So, we talked about bringing your support system in.
Yep.
And when I finally was able to get in with a specialist, first of all, when I found out that there were specialists, I was like, John, there's specialists. And they're both like basically within 15 minutes of our home, which was
Spitting
amazing.
range.
You, Dr. Heegard, and Dr. Palmer.
The wonderful Dr. Palmer.
Yeah, the wonderful. Like, it's just part of his name. And
it's on his card, I think.
yeah, and John went with me to the appointment, and I remember being so anxious and so nervous, and you did a great job of, like, talking me off the ledge. Like, it's going to be okay. He's going to listen. At least you'll get some answers. This person is, knows what they're doing, and I went in with, like, 9 pages of notes. And is that meeting that you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
So he basically said,
the one you kind of shoehorned in there through finding him and social media and
yeah, I get what I want, you guys.
Yeah, you could be here in 3 months.
I'm trying to think, gosh, does that surprise me? It doesn't surprise me.
Because I think he was like 3 months out or something like that, and you're like, nope, that's not going to work. And you basically got it in like 2 days later.
We're learning so much about my personality today.
Well, you know what? You have to advocate for yourself.
You do. And I tell people all the time when they are trying to get in with a specialist to be politely persistent. And you never know when a cancellation is going to happen or when someone's going to be able to squeeze you in. And hopefully Dr. Palmer feels as lucky to know me now that I feel to know him.
I'm sure that
just
is
kidding.
the case. I have no doubt.
But when we went to that meeting, it was really powerful for me to hear from him that he believed me. But then it was so powerful to have a doctor in front of my partner say,
Yes.
I believe your wife's pain.
Sure. Which makes total sense.
Well, I think, and you've just outlined the tragedy of this condition is that, number one, women and adolescents oftentimes, because usually their symptoms start then, have the symptoms and the pain, and then oftentimes there's not a whole lot of support around them, so they're being undermined from the outside and having pain and symptoms from the inside. And
it can be hard to talk about these different symptoms with whomever your support system is. So if you don't have, a partner necessarily, and it's your mom, I can imagine talking about, intimacy issues or other symptoms like that could be really difficult in front of certain audiences. But just to have somebody there with you, I mean, honestly, from the perspective of, oh, I'm not crazy, you heard that too?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Was powerful.
This is, again, the tragedy is that we are so poorly trained in our profession to recognize that this is real and that you were, your symptoms were underplayed and minimized.
Well,
it's terrible.
It's tough because, and don't get me wrong, you're the doctor here, but just from the outside looking in, it's not something that can be found on a blood test.
Yeah.
It's not something that can be found on an ultrasound. It's not something that can be seen until you actually go in and you do the surgery. Or to what stage, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to go off of what the patient's symptoms are, history is, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just tough because you can't, it's not like a definitive, okay, you got the blood test and you have cancer or something.
That's kind of you, actually, John. But really, those of us who I think take care of women should be totally sensitive to these.
Okay.
And you're being overly compassionate to those of us who do this because, somebody should have listened to Britt's symptoms when she was 10 years ago and said, you know what? You've got endometriosis. You can usually tell by talking to somebody without even doing an exam, without doing any sort of, imaging study. You can say, I bet you 90% of the chance if I look in there.
Sure.
But, I mean, that just shows how well trained he is that he knew all of those things. I'm pretty impressed.
Oh, you're talking about...
he just listed
John.
all the ways that you, can't definitively tell. I'm like, that was pretty good, babe.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Seriously, you're,
well educated.
Well, a partner that you are lucky to have, Britt, and vice versa.
So now we have the diagnosis, as in he believes that I probably have endo and he wants to do surgery. And then John was there with my mom and his mother-in-law. Or
my mom.
Yeah.
My mom and my mother-in-law.
There you
your
go.
mom.
That would be it. And who both love the wonderful Dr. Palmer.
The wonderful Dr. Palmer.
And how did that feel talking to him after the surgery? Because I wasn't awake yet.
Well, I mean, you're just relieved, obviously, because anytime your partner goes into surgery, there's risks involved, and when they're put on anesthesia, et cetera. But I felt relieved because it was over. I felt relieved because he said it was successful, and I respect him and believe him and everything. And when he said that it was very, very successful, I was happy and relieved.
Nice. Okay. That makes sense.
And I was happy that and hopeful, I guess, because you never know if the pain is if the endo is gonna come back or what the pain's gonna be like after the surgery. I mean, I was definitely nervous for how you were gonna react to it, and I was hopeful that your pain would subside now with your periods, et cetera, because you just never know. It might come back.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, they say 30% of patients have to have surgery again.
I would say it was something like that.
Is that what you agree with?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's no cure. It's a chronic disease, so I think that that's important to know. I also feel like what you stated, too, And, our marriage has a faith-based element to it. So I think, the vows perspective, when you were talking about like, this is your partner and they're sick, I think that was really lovely. Like this idea of in sickness and in health. And I don't think John realized maybe within the first year of marriage, he was going to be signing up for all of this, because literally we celebrated our 1-year anniversary, and 2 months later I had that appointment with Dr. Palmer. So I think that, diseases like this, and I'm not comparing this to cancer at all.
Sure. And
right?
I keep saying that, and I shouldn't. But.
Well, I think it's hard to, pick a disease that is so widespread that people can understand or relate to. But I know that this isn't a death sentence on me, if I'm managing myself and my symptoms and my mental health. But it can be really difficult in your first year of marriage to go through something like this, and it puts a lot of strain on a relationship.
I can only imagine.
And so now let's double up on that. So now we're in our second year of our marriage. I've had this surgery, and now we're fully on that infertility train.
Mm-hmm. Which is another incredibly stressful experience for every couple.
Yeah. I mean, so tell us your perspective on phase 2 of the John and Britt journey, aka year 2 of our marriage.
It's definitely tough. I mean, all of this has been tough, but I don't know. I'm kind of one of those, what is it, grit your teeth and bear it kind of people, where you just kind of have to get through it. And you have to have, you obviously have to be hopeful and faithful that something is going to happen. As far as the endo side, that you're going to get the care that you need, that you're going to get the surgery, and that you're going to feel better. On the fertility train, you just got to feel hopeful that every single month, is a new month, and it's going to happen this month. You just got to be hopeful about it. I mean, sitting and saying that it's never going to happen or being negative about it, that's not going to help. And, it's definitely tough, and I thought it was tough on us, but I think that we were a good team, and we were able to lean on each other.
Yeah.
And there was obviously a lot of conversations, a lot of tears, a lot,
especially for me. I'm a crier.
This is never going to happen, but you got to talk yourself off the ledge and just have faith that it's going to happen for you at some point.
Yeah. No, I think that that's good. I think, we had a lot of conversations. Do you remember me telling you that we're not special?
I do.
I definitively remember a conversation. I was at the top of the stairs. You were at the bottom of the stairs in our half split house. And we were talking about finances, because we just financed this surgery, right? Because it was in January and I had to meet my deductible. So that was a lot. And now we're talking about going down the infertility path and having 0 insurance coverage. And, it's financially stressful. It's emotionally stressful. It's physically stressful. And I remember him saying, I don't know if we can financially do this. We might need to just take a break. How do people even do this? How are we supposed to save this money and do the other things we want to do and all that? And I think as independent as I am, and I am working, John is definitely has grown up with that provider mentality and wanting to take care of me, which is wonderful, but I don't necessarily require that. And that whole conversation, especially around finances, I just looked at him and said, we're not special, right? People deal with diseases like this all the time. People are dealing with infertility. This is so common. And I think it helped me to say it out loud for myself, but I think it helped John just to think oh, you're right. I don't know. Tell me. I don't want to explain how.
Yeah, I agree with you. And kind of just going back to the point of when we were talking about endo, this is an area where I felt it was a lot easier to talk to my friends about. I don't know if it's just because I'm a little bit older. I'm 38. So my friends who don't have kids, they might be experiencing the same type of infertility issues, or they might not know, or they might have been trying, but it's been taking a lot longer than everyone would have hoped.
Sorry, to clarify, it was easier to talk about infertility with
Correct.
your friends
Yes,
than
correct.
endometriosis.
Sorry, yes.
Okay.
So I felt that, on the infertility aspect of it, I had a lot more conversations with my friends about that. Maybe it's just because they knew more about it, whereas with endo, they might not necessarily understand exactly what it is. They might have heard of it. It might have been brought up. They might have seen one of those commercials on TV that have been played recently. So I just felt like I could talk with my friends more about the infertility stuff. So
can I ask you, so do you feel like, from my perspective, I think in some ways, couples experiencing infertility, that is one of the more stressful experiences they can have.
Sure.
But I'm just wondering if you, Brett and John, infertility, people on the outside can recognize pretty easily if they know you've been trying for a while and you're not pregnant. Well,
obviously,
something's going wrong. Where again, the chronicity of endometriosis can go on for a decade or more without some sort of objective thing. It's not like you can't get pregnant, or you've got a bone sticking out of your arm.
Sure,
that's
a good point.
Or even cancer.
Yeah,
because there's like a lot of times the providers don't. Is there anything? Does that resonate at all with you guys?
I think it does.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that can be unique to endometriosis, that can make the struggle in a relationship so much different. People, like you say, can identify with infertility or, different diseases a little bit better. But with some of these chronic and invisible illnesses like this, like I'm thinking endometriosis and I'm putting it up against thyroid issues like Hashimoto's disease, or people who have fibromyalgia where you
can
can't
check labs.
see it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And that person looks healthy, but you know that they're not, and it's harder to relate to from the outside. I think that, you're right. It's a little bit more tangible, infertility is, because either you have children or you don't have children.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So,
But sorry, yes, I remember that conversation that when you were at the top of the stairs and you said that we're not special. And I totally agree. And you just have to find a way to make it work, whatever that plan is for your relationship. So for us, it was going through and doing an IUI and hoping that worked. It ended up, I'm jumping forward, we'll get back to it, but IVF.
Yep.
They
know. Listeners know.
So it helped us get our plan it kind of snapped us into shape and made us get our plan put together.
Yeah, and I think every relationship's different too. I mean, I think we found strength in having a goal, and I think that's how both of us really live our lives. That's actually something I'm really attracted to in John. Oh, compliment alert.
Ding.
Is his ambition and his drive. And so I knew if I could get us on the same track and we were headed down to the same destination and the same goal, we could do this together. And that's what was hard. And I think educating him on endometriosis, having him hear from the doctor himself, and being there and seeing those images from surgery, I don't know that he needed the validation.
I was just going to say, I put my hand up because I wanted to stop you. Why do you feel like I needed that from the doctor? Because I didn't. I mean, I liked it because it was confirmation for you, but I didn't need that confirmation. So I understand that we started this where I was kind of doubting you, but as we went along, I wasn't doubting you at all. You basically laid out everything, and it was clear that you had endo. So I was happy for the confirmation for you. I didn't need that at all.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Just now.
Right here on podcast. That's.
I didn't need it.
I wonder. I wonder if other listeners or other people with endometriosis, whether their partners are similarly kind of enlightened in terms of saying, yes, this is not normal. This is not exaggeration. Something's going on.
I felt like a weight was lifted. Okay, we have this diagnosis. Now she can have surgery and hopefully get better.
But I felt like I needed you to have that validation from the doctor.
No,
and you, John, felt like Britt needed that validation for herself.
Yes, correct.
Wow, I'm tearing up a little bit.
I know, me too. It could just be my hormones.
Yeah.
Well, that's really special. That's pretty cool. And I wonder if patients just haven't had these conversations with their partners either, because we've never had this conversation before.
Right.
Kind of about this process and how you were feeling. But that's a really powerful statement, because I felt like I think I felt like I was coming off as dramatic and hard to believe and annoying. And I felt so bad. I had a lot of guilt.
You know what?
Sure.
All of those things are right, but they're not your fault. It is
Okay.
annoying. It
Yeah.
is. What else did you say? I'm sorry. Like you're
Dramatic.
not dramatic, annoying. All those things are real, but it's not your fault. And so, like, although it might be annoying that I got to go fill up that water bottle again because I hate going up and down the stairs and having to heat the water.
We're
and
gonna
all
need
this.
to link these, because they're my
Yeah, they're
favorite
awesome.
tool.
They
Well,
are
at
awesome.
38, you're not exactly young.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Those stairs
No
to start to-
spring chicken.
Yeah, right.
All those things are real, but it's not your fault. So I can't fault you for being dramatic or being annoying. If I was in that position, I'd be the same exact way. I'd be more dramatic. I'd be more annoying.
Yeah, you probably would. No, I'm kidding. I think that's important, because we already feel like a burden as, someone with this disease, and we hate it in ourselves, and we're so uncomfortable and so unhappy, and we're dealing with a lot of this internal struggle, and we can't get our doctors to believe us, so why would our partners believe us, kind of feeling. So to know that we don't always necessarily need that extra validation for you, I mean, that's really cool. That's really powerful. So that being said, hindsight's 2020. Here I am, and IVF is working. Do you look back on any of it and you're like, I wish I would have done this differently, or I wish I would have known this sooner?
I probably, because you advocate for yourself, so you don't need me by any means. But I wish I would have pushed you to get a meeting with Palmer or Keegard before you did it, or that you didn't take as long to do
Sooner.
it. Yeah. You kept going back to that OB office where they were telling you that nothing was wrong and that it was all in your head, et cetera, et cetera. I wish I would have, instead of trusting them like you trusted them, I wish I would have said, cut them off, no more of them. Let's find a specialist. But I didn't know that there were specialists. So I wish we could have got help for you sooner.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, as I look back on my journey and I look now, in trying to help others, I feel like I walk this fine line of being really sensitive and meeting them where they're at, whether it's education with this disease or their symptoms. But I find myself just hoping that I can shorten their journey a little bit. And so I'm really outspoken when it comes to seeing a specialist and things like that. I even said to my girlfriend who recently had surgery with Palmer, I was telling her, because she called me and she wanted to talk about painful sex. And I was like, great. I've created this bubble in my life where people are going to talk to me about painful sex. It was like,
It is great, though.
it is. I'm serious. That
people
was a
should
very
not suffer
sincere
in
thing.
isolation and silence.
Absolutely.
So I told
And
her,
you
I was
are-
like, thank you.
Shining a light.
Yeah, for sharing this with me. And she's like, what should I do? My doctor can get me in Friday for surgery. And I just said, if I had met you on the internet, I probably would be a little bit softer. But because you're one of my really good friends, I'm going to tell you that if that person can get you in, you might not just want to go to them. You might want to get a second opinion. I'm really glad I did. So in wrapping this up, I feel like this was really enlightening, not only for our relationship. So thank you for some.
Yeah, both of you, thank you. And this is. I would imagine. I'm just from the outside. I find it enlightening and edifying. If you want to stretch out my vocabulary a little bit, but I think anybody who's listening here will feel the same way.
Yeah.
It's really helpful. Thank
Hope
you.
so.
Do you have any advice, John, for other partners? I mean, you don't need to. You've already dropped quite a few bombs on us this morning, like really beautiful things. So no pressure, but
Beautiful bombs.
yeah. But if you have anything, out there for other partners, or even other people in, the support circle, Any advice?
Oh, I'm on the spot. Just, listen to your partner, listen to your partner's needs. Whatever they're feeling is real, is tangible. So, definitely listen to them, definitely help them through each month going through this painful process. If you both feel that endo really is happening, please go to the doctor and find a specialist sooner than later. It's only going to help. It's okay to talk to people about it. It's harder for guys to get together and talk about it, but it's okay to bring up to your buddies. I guarantee they'll listen and help you through it. Give me a call. Hit me up on Twitter. And then also just on the infertility issues, it's probably the toughest thing you're going to go through, even more than the endo, because it's something you're really, really in together. But just be hopeful that every single month that goes by, if you aren't pregnant, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you're not alone. And hopefully, like it worked out for us, it's going to work out for you.
Yeah.
And Dr. Hegard, thank you for all the things you do in the endo community, because you give people like Britt someone to talk to, someone who believes in them, and someone who can help them. And you help a lot of families get through something that's really tough. And so the work that you do and the work that Palmer does is absolutely fantastic. So thank you for that.
Well,
I can't think of...
I'm rarely this. I kind of don't know what to say. I'm speechless, but thank you.
Yeah.
It's a privilege to take care of people like you, Britt.
Two of my favorite guys in the same room.
A lot of love in this room.
Dr. Palmer were here. We just have a love out here.
It would have been too much.
A hug in.
Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to connect with us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Endocast. Our theme song is Renegade Energy by Tacky Annie. This is a Matriarch digital media production. Learn more about Matriarch and check out all their great podcasts at matriarchdm.com.